My town was in many regards like any other. Town festivals, church gatherings. The only thing that set us apart from any other town was the curfew. Nobody was allowed outside after midnight. At 11:30, the police would sweep the area, making sure everyone was inside. We weren't allowed back out until sunrise. We also were advised to never answer a knock at the door, no matter how desperate or human the entity on the other side seemed. Nobody in my town disobeyed this rule until tonight. Mr. and Mrs. T were new to the neighborhood, and we did give them the warning about the town curfew. They asked why, and we just told them they can't be outside and had a police officer to enforce this rule. That very night they moved in, we heard screaming and arguing coming from their house. It was 2 minutes to midnight, and Mr. T did not acknowledge the warning and ran outside for a cigarette. The police had already done their scan of the town, and nobody would step outside to save him. The clock turned 12, and the moon became obscured by dark clouds. I looked out the window from my bedroom. I could see a few houses doing the same. That's when the streetlights went out. We heard panic, and only the light from the neighbors peeping out their windows enlightened the horrific scene. Shadows gathered around Mr. T, and we saw what looked like long shadowy arms reach up from the ground and coil around the unfortunate man. He shouted in vain, trying to get loose, but it was futile. That's when Mrs. T ran to join him. She screamed to the man who was already half submerged in the asphalt ground. Going outside to save her husband was the last mistake she would make, for when she did, the arms coiled around her too. She was muffled when one of the hands closed her mouth and dragged her down with her husband, who was already dead. That's when we heard the knocking at the door, followed by a voice. It sounded like Mr. T, but I knew better. "Please, let me in. It's very cold out here. Please, they will get me if you don't let me in just for a moment." We knew better than to answer knocks at the door when the shadows gathered. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. I've not seen shadows take people before. It was hard to witness. We thought, as long as we followed the curfew and stayed in our houses, that we would be safe. It was a week after the incident, and the town was due for a lunar eclipse. I figured the light of the moon would be enough to dispel the darkness and save me from the boogeyman at night. I was wrong. That night came, and we went about our usual routine, locking the doors, windows, and drawing the curtains. While we were drawing the curtains, we noticed a thick fog began to set in. We didn't think much of it. I did panic a little when I looked at the calendar and saw that the date had read Friday the 13th. I was never a big buyer until Lucky 13, but something about it this time made me uneasy. We were off to bed as the clock read 12:01. That's when a strong wind flew by. Things went from weird to terrifying and dangerous when the wind became so strong it shattered one of the windows. I was in awe and terror as I watched the curtains, which was our last defense against the shadows, lift from the wind current to reveal the darkness, oozing into our house like a vapor cloud. My dad grabbed me up and my mom grabbed my sister and rushed us to the upstairs bedroom. We could hear screams and panic through the harsh wind. This had never happened before. It couldn't invade your house. Was it stronger somehow? We rushed ourselves into Mom and Dad's giant closet and locked the door, taking a jacket and stuffing it under the door, trying to close off every entrance to the closet. My sister cried. My dad was shaking with fear. My mom tried to comfort both, and I just stood there, shocked. Mom had her phone so we could see the time. It was 12:10. We had a long night ahead of us, so we grabbed some clothes to make a pseudo bed and slept together the best we could. We woke up at some odd hours of the night to knocking on our closet. One voice pretended to be our neighbor, asking to take her child. Another was my best friend Tony. I covered my ears, knowing we were hearing the voices of the deceased. It was 6 a.m. when my dad looked out the closet to see if it was safe and if the darkness was gone. The sky was a metallic gray and blue. We walked downstairs to see our living space covered in broken glass and blown over ornaments. We walked outside to a hellscape, empty neighborhoods, with the exception of a few people who managed to somehow survive the night. Everyone in that town moved the same day. It's a ghost town now, and no one should ever visit it.